In 1991, Sonic the Hedgehog was released and took the gaming world by storm. For the first time, there was a new game which allowed for true competition with Nintendo. Sonic 1 was incredibly successful for Sega, elevating them to a level playing field with Nintendo, something which would go on to change the gaming landscape forever. This game showed the world that Nintendo weren't the only ones who could create an iconic and high quality game franchise, allowing for true competition in the gaming industry, ending Nintendo's monopoly. Sonic 1 was such an impactful game, so obviously Sonic Team got to work on a sequel straight away. Despite its success, Sonic the Hedgehog wasn't anywhere near to a perfect game. It was riddled with level design issues and focused on difficult precision platforming over the high-speed gameplay which the series would come to be known for. These problems were evident to the American developers within Sonic Team, but the Japanese developers wanted to take the sequel in a different direction. The Japanese team felt that Sonic should focus on precision platforming and difficulty over smooth, speed-based gameplay, causing a fundamental divide between the two teams. Because Sega was a Japanese-based company, the Japanese devs had more influence over the project than the Americans, with a lot of the American developers feeling like their ideas were ignored or scrapped in favour of ideas from the Japanese team. To cut a long story short, this eventually led to a schism within the development team, with most of the Japanese developers moving over to their own Sonic sequel, Sonic CD, which would go on to feel a lot closer to Sonic 1 than Sonic 2 did in terms of design philosophy. The remaining developers got to work on Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and they were full of ideas. A new playable character, new stage themes, interesting bosses, and so much more were lined up for this game, ideas which would go on to shape the future of the franchise. Sonic 2's impact on the Sonic series is still felt so strongly to this day, but is it an improvement on the first game? Let's take a look. Sonic 2 opens with Emerald Hill Zone, which, in a similar vein to Green Hill Zone, perfectly establishes the groundwork for the game. Most of the gameplay is similar to the first game, with less focus on momentum to gain speed. The spin dash has been added in this game though, allowing Sonic to charge up a speed boost and break through objects, or just accelerate quickly. This opens up a lot of new options for hidden sections and platforming segments. Emerald Hill Zone is not only similar in purpose to Green Hill, but similar in theme also. Sonic 2 has similarly great 16-bit visuals, which are better here. Every environment is so perfectly depicted in the foreground and background, with all of the stage themes being so visually distinct, each filled with interesting and fresh enemy designs. These visuals are timeless and flawless. This stage is full of alternative pathways, adding lots of exploration and replayability, each of which are filled with ramps and long stretches to build up speed with ease. Honestly, even though overall Green Hill Zone is the more iconic stage and a better tutorial, I've always preferred Emerald Hill. Whether it be the many pathways or hidden items, I feel like Emerald Hill allows for mastery in a lot more ways than Green Hill did. Despite me loving the visuals and catchy music of this stage, the main reason for this is the new way of collecting Chaos Emeralds and their reward. Once you pass the first checkpoint with 50 rings, you enter a special stage, similar to how you did in the first Sonic game. These are 3D, 2D obstacle courses where you need to collect a set amount of rings before the end of the stage. If you achieve this, you get a Chaos Emerald. This time around, once you collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds, you unlock Super Sonic. This makes Sonic build speed really quickly and also makes him invulnerable to damage. This only lasts as long as your ring count though, as once your rings decrease to 0, Sonic reverts back to normal. This not only adds a fun new form for Sonic, but it also makes there a true incentive to collect the Chaos Emeralds and makes it feel truly rewarding once you collect them all. To link this back to Emerald Hill Zone, this allows for the perfect mastery of this stage because there are enough checkpoints scattered throughout the level, meaning that once you learn the stage well enough, you can get all 7 Chaos Emeralds within Emerald Hill and then have Super Sonic to use for the rest of the game. Before I forget, let's talk about the new character, Tails. Overall, I think having a little guy follow you around is pretty neat. Hell, sometimes he even saves you from falling or gets an enemy for you. Tails works by shadowing Sonic's movements and trying his very best to stay close behind him. This isn't perfect and often leads to Tails getting stuck behind random obstacles or just randomly dying. Tails can be controlled by a second player, which is a very cool feature, though it definitely isn't perfect, as the camera doesn't track the second player, so it's easy for them to get cut off the screen. Unlike Sonic 1, each zone has 2 acts instead of 3 here. This works to this game's benefit. No theme overstays its welcome, like many did in Sonic 1. With just 2 acts, as soon as you might be getting tired of a theme, the game switches up. This also allows for a lot more different themes overall, instead of fewer, longer ones. Overall, once again, this opening stage is peak game design. Not only is it very replayable, full of secrets and checkpoints, and a great introduction to the game, on top of being just a pure fun level, but it also has gorgeous visuals and a great soundtrack alongside that. Chemical Plant's up next, which I really love. This stage has a very unique aesthetic, with it being full of varying colours and machines. It feels like something out of a sci-fi movie. They take the chemical theme to the next level. This stage is full of different fluids and equipment, both of which are creatively integrated into the level design. This stage excels where it uses its theme to create unique and memorable platforming challenges. To match that energy, this stage has a fitting and catchy soundtrack, which perfectly suits the lab-esque theme. This one may not carry as much weight nowadays because of how many times it has been recycled by Sega, but remember, there's a reason they keep bringing it back. If it ain't broke. This stage is the perfect second level. Not only does it hold true to what this first stage offered, but it also increases the difficulty an appropriate amount. Marble Zone is seething right now. Aquatic Ruin Zone is next. This stage is what Marble Zone wishes it was. These ruins creatively implement those hidden booby traps without making them overbearing and ruining the stage, unlike Marble Zone. This stage is representative of what the game as a whole tries to accomplish, refinement of the ideas laid out in the first game. It takes the ideas behind Marble Zone and Labyrinth Zone and executes them more effectively, using what worked from the previous game and scrapping what didn't. There are no stages in Sonic 2 which force long-term precision platforming segments, because Sonic team realised that they don't work with the gameplay style of Sonic. Instead, every stage has ramps and many opportunities to build up speed. Visually, this stage is gorgeous. The distant mountains and vibrant greenery supplement the temple ruins very well, leading to a very memorable design overall. This is supplemented by a theme which adds to the feeling of mystery that you would get when exploring ancient ruins. This stage isn't perfect, unfortunately, as the aquatic part of the name heralds the reintroduction of water levels. Yeah, as much as I feel the hidden traps and precision platforming are diminished here, those that remain and the water sections give me Labyrinth Zone PTSD. This level is a step down, but still good. Casino Night Zone follows this up. This stage encapsulates the casino theme perfectly, with platformer obstacles made up of slot machines and pinball pushers consuming pretty much the entire stage. I really like these for the most part, though I find it really easy to get stuck on the pinball machines sometimes. Casino Night is pretty unique among its peers in that it promotes underage gambling. Nah, just kidding. It's pretty unique in the same way Chemical Plant is, with its themed obstacles not really fitting in anywhere else within the game, so they only appear here, leading to a really memorable stage. The neon lights, urban background, high energy music, and vibrant colours really lend well to the cyberpunk-esque theme, and it just looks and sounds great. Hilltop Zone is fine. I don't really have much to say about this one. It's a more cramped version of Emerald Hill Zone with a slightly different design and somewhat unfitting obstacles scattered throughout. In no way is this level bad, it just doesn't really leave a lasting impression. The music isn't anything special either. I do love these little platformer elevator things though. Mystic Cave Zone is a change of pace. I quite like this one. It's a bit slower than the other stages, but that's not a bad thing when every other stage is so speed focused. This stage prioritises puzzles over speed, which makes it stand out a bit among the other stages in this game. Most of the stage consists of opening doors with hidden switches, which you hang off to trigger, finding hidden items and checkpoints, and avoiding falling vine pillars by timing your movement properly. Whilst this isn't my favourite stage, I appreciate it trying to do something different, adding a bit of variety to the lineup. The visuals and music are very fitting for a mysterious cavern like this, with the distinct purple crystal contrasting very well with the greenery of the main stage. This is a solid level overall. Next up, Oil Ocean Zone. The oppressive, polluted feel that this stage brings is really quite something. The colour palette for this stage is mostly orangey brown with the occasional green metal throughout. It perfectly depicts this disgusting, polluted ocean that they were going for. This is reinforced by the music, which fits in perfectly with all of the metal bungs and oil streams scattered throughout. This zone suffers a bit in the level design department, but is in no way bad. It just feels a bit slow, but unintentionally so. With all of the bungs and elevators, it is easy to lose your speed relatively quickly by getting caught on something. Overall though, this stage is a solid addition. Metropolis Zone is something. This zone is definitely the weakest in this game. Not only is a labyrinth of repetitive pathways bringing the pace to a crawl, it is also really long. Remember when I said every stage has 2 acts? Well,
I lied.
This stage has 3 acts, each of which feel less worthwhile than the last. The entire zone is plagued by a lack of fresh ideas. I cannot name an interesting or memorable thing about this zone, and I replayed it twice for this video. This zone reeks of Marble Zone or Labyrinth Zone. The springs grind everything to a halt, the enemies are placed in the most annoying places possible, and the 3 act just makes it almost unbearable. The art direction isn't anything to write home about either. The stage is a repeat of metallic themes seen in the previous game with nothing new or interesting to add. And the music isn't great either. Overall, a disappointing and lacking final proper level, which is a slog to replay. These next few zones serve as the final act of Sonic 2. Firstly, we have Sky Chase Zone. This is essentially just a prelude to the next zone, but it is an interesting idea. You're essentially locked to Tails' plane during an auto-scroller, where you have to avoid enemies and obstacles. They made the right choice keeping this short though, as riding on the plane is pretty restrictive and would get boring very quickly if allowed to overstay its welcome. Next, you disembark into Wing Fortress Zone, which is the last level of the game before the final boss. This stage takes place inside of a giant plane, which is a pretty cool setting. It's pretty solid and provides a good challenge to cap things off, but it isn't one of my favourites. The music is also weird and I'm not really a fan. Finally, we have Death Egg Zone, which isn't really much of a zone at all, it's just a boss fight. You may have noticed that I haven't actually talked about the boss fights much, which is because I don't really have that much to say about them. They are all pretty similar and cheesable. Sonic boss fights are best when they're a big flashy spectacle like the Doomsday Zone in Sonic 3, and none of these bosses really have much of that energy for me in Sonic 2. The final bosses are decent though. One is a mimic of Sonic, which is an interesting test of all the skills you've learned, using them and anticipating them, and the final boss is the Death Egg Robot, which is a decent challenge to cap things off. Overall, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is a great sequel to its predecessor. Sonic 2 took what worked from Sonic 1 and refined it, whilst letting go of almost everything that didn't. Whilst this game isn't perfect, it accomplishes everything it set out to. Sonic's speed is fully focused on, with much less precision platforming than in the previous game, which works greatly to this game's benefit. This game knows what its strengths are and stays true to them, instead of trying to be something that it isn't, like Sonic 1 did. There are so many great additions here: more zones, new special stages, Super Sonic, Tails and 2-player co-op. This game innovated so much, yet stayed true to what makes Sonic great, and that is why Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is the perfect sequel. So that's all I have to say on Sonic 2 for now. If you enjoyed the video, please feel free to like, comment and subscribe, it really helps. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care.